over the last 2 or so months, the diva of Dump Divas Kat Engelbert, along with players in the WNBA who are desperately fighting for money they haven't earned, they have been congregating every Sunday morning at Woke United Methodist like they usually do. But instead of praying to their unrisen King George Floyd and demanding their usual prayer request, chartered flights, an increased supply of Just for Men, complimentary batteries for recently donated dildos, directions for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow so they can collect $1,000,000 salaries. Instead of their usual request, the WNBA and its players, they have been asking Father George to heal the great white hope, Caitlin-Clark.
The WNBA is in serious trouble right now. Their TV ratings are dropping fast, ticket sales have completely stalled, and now the same league that kept saying they were bigger than just one player is desperately hoping Caitlin-Clark will come back and play. That's right. The exact same player they criticized all season long is now their only hope for survival. What do you think she should do? Let me know in the comments below. Here we go again, everyone. The WNBA spent most of last year trying to convince us that Caitlin-Clark wasn't the main star of women's basketball. Now they're practically begging her to return so she can rescue their terrible ratings. Pretty ironic, don't you think? Do you remember when the league officials, players, and many reporters worked overtime trying to tell everyone that success wasn't just about Caitlin? They kept pushing the message that it was about teamwork, that a single player couldn't make or break an entire league. But now that viewership numbers are crashing and fans are already losing interest in the playoffs, guess what? Everything revolves around Caitlin-Clark once again. It's like she was the only person who could make this league matter to people. What a surprise.
Hey, George, it's me, Kathy E. We're in deep shit. The networks are expecting big ratings for the playoffs, and there is absolutely no way these unknown players who think they are stars can deliver. I really need a miracle, Father. Can you please heal the injuries that Caitlin-Clark is dealing with?
Nobody should act surprised by what's happening right now. If you've been watching closely, you could have predicted this disaster from day one. The second Clark got injured, everything fell apart. The excitement disappeared, fans stopped showing up, national television lost interest, social media went silent. ESPN, who built their entire coverage around her story for months, is now desperately scrambling to create content about Angel Reese's latest fashion choices, or Sabrina Ionescu's shooting competitions just to have something to talk about. Take Clark out of the equation, and the entire league becomes completely irrelevant. The panic is starting to set in. Kathy Engelbert, who calls herself the commissioner, is trying to look composed in public, but you can bet she's having sleepless nights behind the scenes. Television networks like ESPN, ABC, and all those streaming platforms made their deals based on one single factor: Caitlin-Clark. She drives viewership, brings in money, and gives people a reason to care about women's basketball beyond the small group of diehard fans on Twitter. Remove her from the picture, and those advertising contracts fall through. Sponsors walk away. And all those players demanding paychecks similar to NBA stars are about to learn that the real world doesn't respond to their social media complaints. Here's the truly ironic part. The exact same players who spent time making fun of Clark, delivering dirty plays against her during games, and getting annoyed every time she received media attention are now secretly praying for her return. They would never say this publicly because their egos won't allow it. But deep down, they know the truth. When Caitlin-Clark steps on the court, their paychecks grow larger. When Caitlin-Clark plays, actual audiences tune in to watch them perform. When Caitlin-Clark is active, they suddenly become relevant. Remove her from the game and they return to being nobodies. It's that straightforward. Beyond their small circle of supporters, nobody gives them a second thought. This harsh reality is exactly what the WNBA is being forced to accept right now. The statistics tell the whole story, and statistics never deceive. During Clark's healthy period, Fever games were breaking viewership records throughout the league. We're discussing primetime numbers that actually beat Major League Baseball ratings. Ticket purchases exploded in every city where she played. Merchandise flew off the shelves. Teams that had been losing money for years suddenly found themselves with sold-out venues the moment Clark arrived in town. Now that she's been absent for weeks, those figures have crashed completely. We're seeing such a dramatic drop that even the most creative public relations efforts can't hide the damage. League officials can talk about record attendance numbers all they want, but when the most crucial part of the season, the playoff race, generates less excitement than a practice game, there's clearly a serious issue. And Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, certainly isn't making the situation any better.
There is absolutely no reason for Caitlin to return. But according to Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Felines, not only is she hoping that Caitlin returns for the playoffs, Steph wants to see the Roo from Waterloo back on the court in the regular season. The question is why?
White has been making public statements about wanting Clark to return for the regular season, possibly even during the playoffs. Hold on a second. When did rushing an injured star player back onto the court just to boost television numbers become acceptable? You would expect any coach to put their most important player's well-being first, but apparently not. It seems like the main concern is giving ESPN content to discuss when they're not covering LeBron James stories.
Turn to practice. Hell, at this point, I don't even know if she's on the Huffy. Well, KC, don't you mean the treadmill? The WNBA can't afford a treadmill. When players are rehabbing injuries or looking to warm up, the WNBA provides them with a used Huffy or sometimes a Schwinn. But either way, with 10 or so days left in the regular season, Caitlin is nowhere near ready to return. But according to Stephanie White, we could see the Roo from Waterloo on the court soon.
Let's cut through the nonsense and be real about what's happening. This has nothing to do with winning games or making the playoffs. The Fever won't be taking home any championship trophy this season, whether Caitlin plays or not. This comes down to one thing: cash. The WNBA understands that the only way to stay in business and keep paying everyone is to get Clark back on that court, regardless of what might happen to her. And here's the biggest joke of all. The exact same players and league executives who constantly talk about protecting athletes and giving them control over their careers are now the ones pushing hardest to put Clark's future health at risk for immediate profits. Of course, they'll spin it by saying she's desperate to help her teammates. Give me a break. Everyone can see what's really happening behind the scenes.
I have been telling you guys since July, there is no way Caitlin should return this season. The Indiana Felines are well on their way to being a flaming ass fire. They are barely clinging to the final spot in the playoffs. Sophie Cunningham's out for the season, which means Caitlin would be on the court unprotected. She wouldn't have her bodyguard to protect her from opposing players who like to get physical.
The reality is simple. Caitlin holds too much value for the WNBA to handle her like every other athlete on their roster. The league cannot survive if she stays sidelined. They cannot risk losing their audience. And they absolutely cannot allow their biggest moneymaker to figure out that she holds all the power in this relationship. Because let's face the brutal facts. If Caitlin woke up tomorrow and decided she was finished with women's professional basketball, if she chose to play internationally or simply focus on endorsement deals and public appearances, this entire league would crumble. Game over. Lights out. The end. Angel Reese can appear in all the Netflix shows she wants. Sabrina Ionescu can practice her shooting for hours. Aja Wilson can share endless inspirational posts on social media. Without Clark in the picture, none of these players can generate real excitement. That explains the panic you're witnessing right now. The league isn't simply hoping Clark returns to action. They're practically on their knees pleading, quietly, away from public view. They're likely putting pressure on the Fever organization to rush her recovery process. Television executives are making phone calls. Corporate partners are demanding answers. Players want their salaries guaranteed. Everyone has their palm extended, waiting. And only one person can deliver what they're asking for: Caitlin Clark. But here's what needs to be said. Clark doesn't owe anyone a single thing. Not one bit. She has no obligation to the league officials. She has no debt to the supporters. And she certainly owes nothing to those same athletes who spent an entire year attempting to destroy her reputation. Her only duty is to protect herself, her playing career, and her long-term future. If that requires staying off the court for the remainder of this season, then that's exactly what should happen. Now, let's examine what occurs when an organization relies entirely on one individual and then loses that person. The WNBA has been riding Caitlin Clark's popularity since she announced she was turning professional. They used her image in every marketing campaign, filled stadiums purely because she would be playing, and pretended they had created this success through their own efforts. But the moment she got injured, everything went quiet. Suddenly, their "we're bigger than any single athlete" message started looking pretty hollow. The contradiction is almost too obvious to ignore. These same players who kept demanding, "treat us all with equal respect," are now performing in front of empty seats and watching terrible television numbers without Clark on the court. It turns out that demanding equal treatment doesn't automatically create equal fan interest. People don't buy tickets to watch a group effort. They buy tickets to see superstars perform. And the only genuine superstar this league currently has is watching from the sidelines. Here's what league leadership refuses to acknowledge publicly. Clark isn't simply another athlete on their roster. She is their entire marketing strategy. She is their main attraction. Without her participation, the WNBA becomes just another minor sports organization fighting for scraps of media coverage. But when she plays, suddenly people who never cared about women's basketball start paying attention. Major television networks start caring, big companies start writing checks, and yes, even NBA social media, typically obsessed with LeBron James debates, actually notices what's happening. Naturally, they're panicking to bring her back onto the court. This isn't about creating fair competition. This isn't about the Fever making a strong playoff push. This is about staying alive as a league. If these upcoming playoffs bomb completely, and everything suggests they will, the entire organization faces serious danger. Consider how everything has played out. For months, the WNBA couldn't stop bragging about breaking attendance records. Ticket purchases here, merchandise sales there, television numbers through the roof. But examine those claims more carefully, and you'll discover something interesting. Every single record happened when Caitlin Clark was playing. The Fever traveling to other cities brought record ticket sales. The Fever appearing on television delivered record viewership. The Fever content on social media went viral instantly. Remove the Fever and remove Clark from the equation, and those records vanish quicker than a WNBA player blocking you on Twitter after you ask a difficult question. So, with Clark sitting on the bench, what remains? Angel Reese making Netflix appearances. Aja Wilson putting up impressive statistics that nobody outside of Vegas pays attention to. Sabrina Ionescu making shots that ESPN tries desperately to promote as exciting. It simply isn't working. None of these efforts create the buzz that Clark generates naturally. Casual sports fans don't care about any of it. Television networks understand this reality. Advertising companies recognize it too. And buried beneath all their public statements, league officials know it as well. There's another side to consider here. The players themselves. They would never admit this publicly, but they're worried about this situation too. Higher television ratings directly translate to bigger contracts, better sponsorship deals, and more money in everyone's pockets. Without Clark drawing audiences, all of that income potential shrinks dramatically. Those dreams about earning million-dollar salaries suddenly seem much less achievable. That constant push for more respect, more media coverage, more everything starts falling apart. The reason is simple. The league without Caitlin Clark looks exactly like it did 5 years ago. Completely irrelevant. That's why I find it amusing every time someone claims the WNBA was doing perfectly well before Caitlin Clark arrived. Absolutely not. It was completely invisible to mainstream America. You could walk through any neighborhood, ask 100 random people to name just one WNBA player, and 99 would have no answer. Then Caitlin Clark entered the scene, and suddenly everyone could name at least one women's basketball player. That previous state wasn't doing fine. That was a league getting rescued from obscurity. But now the organization has returned to its starting point, invisible again without her presence. Instead of accepting this obvious truth, they're frantically trying to change the narrative. They're hoping, praying, and begging for her return to action. You can practically imagine Cathy Engelbert sitting in the league headquarters, lighting a candle and whispering, "Please let her ankle recover. Please let her groin get better. Please let her drag us back to relevance." It's both pathetic and amusing to watch. Let's also remember how risky this entire situation has become. Caitlin Clark has already been targeted more aggressively than any other player in the league. Brutal fouls, dirty plays, non-stop verbal abuse from opponents. She had Sophie Cunningham serving as her unofficial protector on the court. And now Sophie's season is over due to injury. So what exactly is the strategy if Clark returns to play? Just send her back into that hostile environment, still recovering from injuries, with no protection, and hope nothing bad happens? That's not a real strategy. That's a desperate gamble. The intelligent approach would be keeping her sidelined, allowing complete rest and recovery, letting her heal properly, and planning for future success. But the WNBA refuses to think about the future. They're focused on television ratings right now, sponsor relationships today, staying relevant this very moment. They cannot afford to wait because they understand that once people stop discussing their league, it's completely finished. And here's the core issue. Caitlin Clark's professional career stretches far into the future. She has many years ahead of her, endorsement contracts already arranged, and a devoted fan base that will support her regardless of where she plays. The WNBA faces a completely different situation. This organization doesn't have the luxury of time. Each disappointing season brings them closer to shutting down entirely. Every drop in viewership pushes them toward total irrelevance. Each sponsor that cancels their contract makes their survival more difficult. Obviously, they're holding on to Clark for dear life. She represents more than just their top athlete. She's their only chance at staying afloat. But here's the most important part. She has no dependency on them whatsoever. She doesn't require the WNBA to maintain her fame and success. Clark could walk away from professional basketball tomorrow and still earn millions of dollars. She could sign with an international team and still attract more fans than most WNBA athletes put together. She could simply travel across America shooting shots from half court in empty gymnasiums, and people would pay money to watch her perform. That demonstrates her incredible star power. That shows how meaningless the WNBA becomes when she's not involved. I believe Clark understands this reality completely. I'm certain her management team recognizes this truth. I'm sure her corporate partners are fully aware of this dynamic. That's what makes it ridiculous to suggest she has any obligations to the league. She owes them absolutely nothing. If anyone owes anything, it's the other way around. They owe her for every ticket purchase, every television rating increase, every news story written about their sport. She created their relevance from nothing. She brought them mainstream attention they never had before. And how did they show their appreciation? By ridiculing her, by allowing opponents to attack her, by attempting to diminish her accomplishments, and now they expect her to rescue their failing business. Best of luck with that strategy. So yes, the WNBA is operating in full crisis mode right now, and frankly, they deserve to be worried. Because regardless of whether Clark returns to play or not, the reality has already been revealed for everyone to see. This league amounts to absolutely nothing without her presence. Zero. And there's the complete picture. The WNBA is scrambling more desperately than ever before, pleading with the one player they spent months attempting to destroy to return and save their television numbers. There's something almost beautiful about the irony, honestly. Without Caitlin Clark, this league appears more vacant than their playoff venues. With her on the court, suddenly everyone acts like they've always cared about women's basketball. But let me ask you this question. Should Clark even take the risk of coming back? Or should she remain sidelined and force the WNBA to handle the disaster they brought upon themselves? Share your opinions in the comments section. Hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you won't miss our next detailed analysis.